The Little Things, an original audiobook by Ken of Ken's World of Science Fiction. Copyright 2023, Ken's World of Science Fiction, all rights reserved. Scouting Party Beta had one of the most sought-after assignments in the galaxy: to find and evaluate habitable planets for potential human colonization. They were known for their stringent protocols, and their first and foremost rule was clear. No intelligent life could inhabit the planet, not even primitive sentient beings. Earth had learned from its past mistakes the ethical and moral consequences of colonization without respecting the sovereignty of existing life forms. The crew consisted of 3 dedicated members: Captain Ava Ramirez, Dr. John Wallace, and Lieutenant Evelyn Duffy. As their spaceship, the Fair Hope, soared through the cosmos, the team gathered around a central table in the mission briefing room. A holographic image of their target planet, designated Astra 7, floated above them. The room was dimly lit, illuminated only by the soft glow of the hologram, creating a solemn atmosphere for this critical mission. Captain Ramirez, a seasoned space explorer with a passion for ethical exploration, began the conversation.
All right, team, here we are again, Scouting Party Beta, on the brink of history. As we know, our primary objective is to ensure the planet is uninhabited by intelligent life forms. Scouting Party Alpha has completed its preliminary assessments, and all we need to do is put boots on the ground and give it a final inspection. Sounds like a walk in the park, right?
Dr. Wallace, an astrophysicist, nodded.
That's the idea, Captain. Scouting Party Alpha did a thorough job, and we're usually just the confirmation crew, as always. As far as I'm concerned, I would rather not observe from a distance, like I used to do on Scouting Party Alpha missions. I want to get down there and get close to the details. It's the little things that count.
Lieutenant Duffy, a linguistic expert with a penchant for philosophy, chimed in.
Well, while it might seem like a routine mission, we mustn't forget the importance of our work. We're essentially the gatekeepers for the next step in human expansion. But what's the point of these rules if we don't explore the nuances of what it means to be intelligent or sentient?
Captain Ramirez smiled at Lieutenant Duffy's thought-provoking remark.
You're right, Lieutenant. It's important to understand what we mean by intelligent life. Let's not forget our history. Colonization has often resulted in the oppression and extermination of less advanced civilizations. We're here to ensure that doesn't happen.
They continued their discussion, debating the definitions of intelligence and sentience as they related to the mission. Dr. Wallace argued from a scientific perspective, quoting various criteria, but Evelyn, well-versed in philosophy and the intricacies of different cultures, introduced a multitude of perspectives.
In Buddhism,
Lieutenant Duffy began,
there's a belief that all beings possess inherent Buddha nature. They argue that even simple life forms may have the potential for enlightenment. Science, on the other hand, might define intelligence by cognitive abilities and problem-solving skills. But who are we to play judge and jury for other life forms?
Dr. Wallace spoke up.
Earth's expansion into space is not possible without habitable planets, we know that. I used to wonder why we struggle so much over simple life forms. Life forms that we can share a planet with without causing them to go extinct like our ancestors did many times in the past on Earth. But now I realize that we can't always trust ourselves, even though we are nothing like our ancestors.
Captain Ramirez agreed.
We must be cautious, but we can't be paralyzed by uncertainty or make quick decisions. Our mission depends on clear criteria, and for now, we have the rules to guide us. If we start making exceptions based on philosophical debates, we risk moral ambiguity.
As the Fair Hope descended toward Astra 7, the team's tension grew. They entered the planet's atmosphere, marveling at the picturesque landscapes that stretched out before them. They were greeted by lush, vibrant forests, crystal-clear lakes, and mountain ranges that touched the sky. The sight was awe-inspiring, and Ava couldn't help but feel the potential of this planet to become humanity's new colony. Previous scans by Scouting Party Alpha revealed nothing more than small insect-like life, nothing larger than a beetle. Scouting Party Beta scanned the planet in a lower orbit and documented that all of the life forms were concentrated in one location near the equator of the planet. They focused their attention there. After several hours of scouting in an unassuming location, they stumbled upon a fascinating sight. In a clearing, they discovered what appeared to be a massive ant hill. The mounded nest was about 100 yards long and at least that wide. On closer inspection, they saw tiny creatures like ants, but smaller, so small that it was impossible to make out any details. They seemed to be scurrying around, busy with their activities. It also appeared that many of them were airborne, hovering around the colony, only detectable by the light reflecting off them like tiny specks of dust. Dr. Wallace suggested that they investigate the creatures further to be thorough.
That's interesting.
He said,
I would like to set up the equipment here and spend some time investigating these creatures.
Lieutenant Duffy, her eyes fixed on the bustling little creatures, raised a concerned eyebrow.
Is it really necessary? They look like simple insects. Can't we just continue with our mission? It's just a formality, right?
Dr. Wallace leaned forward, his expression earnest.
Evelyn, this is more than a formality. I truly believe that we must respect all life, no matter how small, if it exhibits any level of intelligence or sentience. Our mission to evaluate habitable planets should not be limited by a strict definition of intelligence. We've seen what Earth's history of colonization without respect for other life forms has led to environmental destruction and exploitation. We can't repeat those mistakes.
Lieutenant Duffy, with a furrowed brow, responded,
John, I understand your perspective, but we need to be practical. There's a fine line between respect for life and the viability of human expansion into the galaxy. If we set the bar too low, we'll end up in a situation where we can't even colonize a planet with basic plant life. Earth's population is expanding, and we need new homes. We can't let sentimentality hinder our survival.
Dr. Wallace, undeterred, countered,
I'm not advocating for unchecked sentimentality. I'm advocating for a more nuanced approach. We can distinguish between highly intelligent, potentially advanced civilizations and simpler life forms. But we must be cautious about drawing hard lines that could exclude life forms with unique qualities and potential value to our understanding of the universe.
Lieutenant Duffy, her tone pragmatic, replied,
John, you're talking about potential value, but what about practicality? These ants we discovered might seem industrious and interesting, but do we really want to include them in our criteria for inhabitable planets? What's next? Bacteria? If we include every life form that exhibits some level of intelligence, we won't be able to colonize any planet.
Dr. Wallace leaned in, his voice softening as he considered her point.
Evelyn, I get your concern about practicality, but there's a balance to strike. I'm not suggesting we make a blanket inclusion of all life forms, but rather that we approach each case with careful consideration. We need to determine the potential impact of a life form on our mission, the ecosystem, and the larger universe.
Lieutenant Duffy shook her head, her frustration evident.
John, I appreciate your perspective, but what's at stake is the expansion of human civilization. We can't be overly cautious. There's a lot riding on our success, and we have a responsibility to future generations. If we're too liberal in our criteria, we might never find a suitable planet for colonization.
Dr. Wallace furrowed his brows deep in thought.
I agree that the survival of humanity is paramount, but at what cost? Are we willing to become the same colonizers who wreaked havoc on Earth's indigenous populations? If we're only driven by survival and disregard for other life forms, what does that say about us as a species? We must strive for a balance between expansion and ethical exploration.
Lieutenant Duffy, not backing down, said,
I understand your ethical stance, and I respect it, but the reality is that we're operating in a vast universe with limited resources. We have to be selective and pragmatic in our approach. There are countless uninhabited planets out there, and we can't afford to be overly cautious and exclude them based on the presence of simpler life forms.
Dr. Wallace sighed, his gaze focused in the direction of the ants.
Evelyn, this is a complex issue, and I don't have all the answers. What I know is that we must tread carefully and engage in a profound ethical debate. It's not just about expanding, it's about expanding responsibly, respecting the sanctity of life and learning from the mistakes of the past.
The tension in the air was palpable as they considered their options. Finally, Captain Ramirez spoke.
Lieutenant Duffy, you have a point. This may indeed be a formality, but we can't allow any exceptions. Let's perform a closer examination, just to be sure.
After retrieving equipment from their ship, the three got to work. Dr. Wallace, holding a magnification device that could see beneath the ground, approached the ant-like creatures with a keen sense of curiosity. He squatted down and peered at the device, making adjustments and entering data on the screen. What he saw left him breathless. He whispered,
Interesting.
Do you have something?
the captain asked.
I'm not sure. I seem to be detecting faint electromagnetic signals. Strange.
He shook his head, as in disbelief.
This may take a while.
He took a module out of the device he was holding and handed it to the captain.
Can you and Lieutenant Duffy run this through the ship's computer for analysis? I need more time here at the site.
The two left Wallace and returned to the ship. After several hours, they returned. Before Captain Ramirez could ask, Dr. Wallace quickly rose from the spot where he was working.
Captain, you need to see this.
Captain Ramirez and Lieutenant Duffy joined Wallace as he showed them a magnified view of the inside of the structure. The seemingly primitive creatures turned out to be anything but. Beneath the surface, they found a highly organized society with complex architecture, advanced technology, and even signs of communication through an intricate system of pheromones. Lieutenant Duffy gasped in amazement.
Captain, obviously this is more than just an ant colony. It's a developed, sentient civilization, unlike anything ever seen by any of our scouting parties.
Captain Ramirez couldn't hide her astonishment.
Are you saying they're sentient beings, that they are self-aware?
Dr. Wallace turned to face the captain.
It would seem so.
Do you think we can communicate with them?
Possibly, Captain. They might have a society as advanced as our own, so we must try. We can't ignore that.
Lieutenant Duffy, her philosophical musings now taking on a practical dimension, suggested,
Let's approach them cautiously, communicate peacefully, and try to determine their level of intelligence. This is amazing.
After days of studying the creatures, they initiated communication with the beings who responded with a complex pattern of pheromones. Through observation and translation, they soon learned about the society's advanced culture, art, and a complex code of ethics. The ant-like beings, known as the Formians, expressed their curiosity about humanity and the universe. They had knowledge of other intelligent life forms in the cosmos and had seen their own share of colonization attempts. The Formians shared stories of peaceful negotiations and respect, as well as those of invasive species that had brought devastation to their worlds. Captain Ramirez made the decision.
Obviously, we won't colonize Astra 7. We will respect the sovereignty of the Formians and leave this planet untouched. We will immediately inform Earth about this remarkable civilization.
Evelyn, reflecting on the philosophical debates they had earlier, smiled at the outcome.
It seems intelligence and sentience are not exclusive to our kind. They exist in the vastness of the cosmos in countless forms. This mission has been an eye-opener.
The team conveyed their decision to the Formians, who responded with gratitude and respect. As the Fair Hope lifted off from Astra 7, they left behind a civilization that had been spared the same fate that had befallen so many others. Their mission had transformed from a routine check into a profound lesson in humility, ethics, and the vast spectrum of intelligence in the universe. Back on Earth, Scouting Party Beta's mission report made headlines. It became a catalyst for discussions on the ethics of colonization and humanity's place in the cosmos. It was a reminder that the universe was teeming with life, intelligence, and sentience, waiting to be discovered and respected. Scouting Party Beta had not only fulfilled their mission, but they had also paved the way for a new era of exploration and cooperation with intelligent life forms, and in doing so, once more proved that in a vast universe of possibilities, it's the little things that count.